Tonight, we're talking about how to approach activity with confidence. All right. I just want to take a second to thank our sponsors of this program. And I just want to go over a couple of features of Zoom webinar that you can utilize during this program. So we've got the chat box where you guys can interact and answer and give some feedback to the presenters as they prompt you for some fun questions to kind of get rolling together today. And then we also have the Q&A box. So during the program, you can think of some really great questions that we can turn over to our speakers later in the program. And then you can, of course, use that show captions feature if you'd like to utilize that during the webinar. And tonight we have two really awesome speakers with us today. We have Courtney Capwell, a physical therapist from Greene, Rhode Island, and we have Samantha Balistreri, physical therapist from Pennsylvania, here today as well. So I will turn it over to them and let them chat about all the awesome content we have for staying active.
Thank you, Tori. You nailed my last name, by the way. Great job. So hi, everyone. We're excited to talk about staying active today. So our first slide is on our learning objectives. Tori, if you don't mind switching. Thank you. Okay, so we're hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll understand the importance of exercise and physical activity for your health and wellness. We're going to talk a lot about what research recommends and what's currently being recommended for individuals with MS. So you can become aware of everything that's up to date right now with research. And then we're also going to be discussing ways to make exercise and physical activity possible at all ability levels. So no matter where you are, what kind of level you're at right now, hopefully we can talk about ways for you to stay active. So we're going to start right into the many benefits of exercise. And there's a lot. So we've probably heard at least some kind of mix of some of these, but exercise really does a lot for us. It's truly medicine. It's just something that may not be prescribed as often as a pill. So exercise improves your strength, your posture, your mobility, your mood, your confidence, your overall wellness. It can help you sleep. It can help improve your appetite. It can address your fitness level, so just make you a little bit more tolerant of different types of activity throughout your life. It can improve your cognitive functioning, so make your brain work a little bit harder, which we'll get into again later. It can improve what's we call quality of life, and we talk about that a lot in physical therapy. It's basically your rating of how you would kind of say what the quality of your life is, how happy you are with how you're living. And then it can also do things to improve or maintain the levels of independence that you have with MS, which is extremely important. Some additional benefits that exercise can do is it can lessen your fatigue, which I know is a really big issue with multiple sclerosis. About 80% of people living with MS have fatigue. So exercise, if done properly, which we'll get into, can help lessen your fatigue. It can decrease your chance of a secondary illness. So that's something like a primary illness would be something that you get directly from your multiple sclerosis, and a secondary illness could be caused by something like deconditioning, or because you're not very active, you have trouble with other things in your life. It can prevent overuse injuries. So for individuals who really rely on their arms a lot, exercising the correct muscles can help prevent overuse injuries. It can create opportunities for new social outlets. So, exercising with a partner or with a group, it has really been shown to be wonderful for the social well-being part of your life. And it can help with weight loss and weight maintenance. So we'll get into details with all of these. This is just kind of an introduction of what we're going to talk about today. So why should you exercise? So hopefully those benefits kind of gave you some motivation to exercise. But if it didn't, you can know that exercise is proven to positively affect all of the following in people living with MS. So your muscular strength, your aerobic capacity, your walking performance, fatigue, depression, quality of life, your brain health. So even though you have MS, you can still reap all these wonderful benefits just like anyone else. Good. So types of exercise is next, and I'm going to pass it off to Courtney.
Thanks, Sam. So we will talk about types of exercise in creating a well-balanced exercise program. We're going to talk about flexibility, strength, aerobic exercise, and balance. The first type we'll get into is flexibility. So flexibility is basically stretching or gently elongating the muscles, which can be done through just a stretch to the major muscle groups in the body, or yoga practice has a lot of flexibility as well. So whichever you would enjoy more, that's what we would suggest to achieve some flexibility in your routine. But when stretching, you want to get into a position where you feel your muscle elongating, maybe a slight pull, but it should not be painful. It should be a comfortable feeling. And you want to hold that for 30 to 60 seconds. Just static hold, avoid any ballistic movements or bouncing. And that would achieve the flexibility requirement or recommendation for exercise. And what we recommend is that you do stretch the major muscle groups of your body every day or most days of the week. And you want to do each stretch about 2 to 3 times for each major muscle group. Next is strength training. So as Sam said, there is a lot of evidence that people with MS can in fact get stronger or improve muscle force production when they perform strength training. So that's really important to know, that you can strengthen yourself despite having MS with this type of exercise. There are additional benefits that the research has shown to strength training specifically, including improved independence, improved gait patterning, as well as improved endurance of walking, improved immune system function, improved overall respiration or breathing, decreased fatigue, decreased overall disability. So all really important benefits that can come from strength training. Next slide, please. And the recommendations we have for strength training is to find a way to add some resistance into the exercise that you're doing. So of course you can do body weight resistance like squats or push-ups. You can even amend the position of some of these. Push-ups, for example, can be done against a wall or up against a countertop. But you can also add weights. So there are hand weights like are pictured in the image here. You can also add resistance bands. If you don't have hand weights or resistance bands, you can add household items like soup cans or water bottles, just a little something to add some resistance to or weight to what you're doing. We suggest achieving 8 to 12 repetitions of an exercise. And at 8 to 12 repetitions, you should feel challenged. You should feel that you're working that muscle. If you don't, you should increase your resistance until you can find the right weight so that when you do 8 to 12 repetitions of an exercise, you feel challenged by the end of that set. And we do suggest 2 to 3 sets of each strength exercise that you're doing. Now, if you're having trouble with your strength training, maybe you don't know where to start, maybe you're uncomfortable, maybe you feel like you're just not doing it correctly, that would be a really great reason to see a physical therapist who could help you kind of customize a program for yourself, make sure you're hitting all the main muscle groups, and just troubleshoot if there are some issues occurring.
All right, I'm going to take over now and talk about aerobic training, which is a really great way to get yourself in better shape. And aerobic training, it doesn't need to be complicated. It really is just anything that increases your heart rate and increases your respiration rate or the rate at which you're breathing. So this type of exercise really trains your cardiovascular system. So how your heart works with your lungs and the rest of your body. So endurance exercise, when we mention that, that's anything that you would say is low to moderate intensity and it's well tolerated. You feel positive effects from the exercise itself, and also at the end of the day, maybe you're not as tired. So in finding this moderate intensity level, we use what's often called a RPE scale, or rate of perceived exertion. So a simple way to think about it is if you're doing a 0 to 10 scale, and a 0 is you're completely relaxed, maybe sitting on the couch, And a 10 is the hardest you've worked in your life. Maybe that would be like finishing a marathon. So where we want you to stay with a moderate intensity exercise is about like between a 4 and a 6. So you don't feel like you're going all out. You wouldn't say it's hard, but you also wouldn't say that it's easy. So finding that level is really important for any type of endurance exercise that you're going for. We'll talk a little bit more about further recommendations for this, but when we say moderate intensity, that's what we're looking for. So there's benefits not only to your body, but also your psychology. So how you think about yourself and how you think about your life. Both are very important. So for recommendations, like I mentioned, there are an incredible amount of options with aerobic exercise, and the best one is the one that you enjoy, because it's going to make you more likely to do it day in and day out. So let's do a little chat here and tell me in the chat what some of your favorite aerobic exercises are. While you're doing that, I'll just tell you some examples. So of course, you might think of aerobic exercise as running. That's absolutely an aerobic exercise. It could also be walking, jogging, swimming, bicycling. It could be dancing. So some people are throwing in, some people threw in some dancing, some water aerobics. I love that. Walking your dog, that's absolutely an aerobic exercise. Horseback riding, that's great. Water sports, so many, like any type of sport could be an aerobic exercise. Bowling, it definitely could be. Rowing machine, gardening, running in the pool, that's great. So as you can see, there are really endless options. Anything that gets your heart rate up, you can call an aerobic exercise. If you're doing something, just again, if you make sure you're at that moderate range, if you're specifically working towards an aerobic exercise. Hiking, good. So balance training recommendations. So balance is extremely important. Every patient that I have that has multiple sclerosis, I have a balance component. So what is balance training? It's when you combine any type of movement that makes you feel a little bit off, a little bit unsteady, and you're working on making improvements. So we mentioned earlier that yoga is a great flexibility exercise. It can also be great for your balance. So you can see in this picture, this woman, how her posture is. That would be very challenging for some individuals who have difficulties with their balance. So you want to include some balance exercises to help you reduce things like your risk of falling. Training your balance can, if you do become a little unsteady, it can make you at a lower risk of ending up falling. It kind of improves your ability to regain your balance. So what a great way to start training your balance is try to find a position that feels like slightly challenging and see if you can hold it for 30 seconds. So there's kind of a tier for this. And I typically start for an individual that's able to stand. I have them just stand up with their feet shoulder width apart and see if they can hold that position for 30 seconds. If they can, then I start to change how their feet are positioned, maybe bring your feet closer together, which we call like a narrow base of support. So your feet are really close together. See if you can hold that position for 30 seconds. There's a ton of different modifications here. The number one takeaway is that you're doing something that is safe. So I often recommend that people stand in like the corner of a room. So their back is to the corner of a room. And this just helps make sure that if you lose your balance, you have support on both sides of you and behind you. And then if you have like a sturdy chair or maybe a walker in front of you, that would help with losing the balance in front. So safety first, make sure that you're in a good position, or have someone like a safety partner there to like help challenge your balance with you. But you don't want to do work on your balance and try to train yourself and get stronger and then end up hurting yourself. So just safety first, and then you can play around with different positions that make you feel a little unsteady and see if you can hold it for 30 seconds. And again, like Courtney mentioned, if you're struggling with trying to find the right movement that makes you a little bit unsteady or might be the right place for you, a physical therapist can certainly help. So some current exercise recommendations for people with MS. So again, this is the slide I talked about earlier where I was going to let you know what the recommendation was. So that moderate intensity exercise, like you're not easy, but not hard, kind of like that perfect zone in the middle. A lot of research on this has come out that shows 150 minutes a week is where you should be. So you can break that up into like 5 days a week or 7 days a week. But if you're getting that 150 minutes in, then you're right on the right track. For HIIT training, this is high intensity interval training, and this is typically done in shorter bouts, so 20 minutes or less. And that is where you allow yourself to get in that hard zone on that 0 to 10 scale I talked about earlier. High intensity interval training isn't for everyone, but if you consider yourself in like fairly good shape and you haven't had a fall, that might be something that you incorporate into your exercise routine. A well-balanced program includes all 4 of these components that Courtney and I just talked about. So aerobic training, strengthening, balance, and stretching are all parts of a great program, a great fitness program. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about some population-specific considerations. So for individuals with MS, we want to avoid over-fatiguing, overheating, and impairing your balance or having you put yourself in an unsafe situation, like I mentioned. So more to come on that, but just keep that in mind.
And now we'll talk about some brain health benefits, in addition to the physical benefits that we just discussed. So as we heard earlier in this presentation, maybe we already knew, there are a lot of physical benefits to exercise. There's a whole laundry list of important physical benefits to exercise for the whole general population, and then also specific to MS, the research has shown. But there's newer research that's looking specifically at brain health benefits, which may not be quite as obvious, but they are being shown to be linked to exercise. So what we do know through the research is that those who exercise regularly, and that would be defined as the recommendation we gave of 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, those people do have less damage in parts of their brain. They do have a better foundation or a neuroprotective environment in the brain to recover from an MS attack. So just how exercise, excuse me, just how exercise releases endorphins, or those feel-good kind of neurotransmitters, into your brain for mood, it also releases other chemicals and neurotransmitters that have a neuroprotective effect. So it's kind of a similar thing. And so we do know that exercise can reduce long-term disability, and that's most likely a combined effect of the brain health improvements that we're talking about now and the physical improvements that we began the presentation with. So, which brings us to neuroplasticity, which really means that the ability of the neurons or the nerves within the brain, they have the ability actually to change their function, their chemical profile, and their structure. And not only do they have this ability, but they are constantly changing. And given the right conditions, it can constantly be changing in a positive way. And so what we know through the research and the more recent research up and coming is that exercise can facilitate these processes, and it really encourages more of the positive changes that we're looking for. So we know that the brain is not fixed as we once believed it was. We once believed that the brain was a set organ and that was that. But now we know that it's not fixed. Instead, it's flexible, it's adaptable, it can change, and it does change. So areas of representation within your brain that control different functions, they can become larger or they can become smaller. And that reorganization is really based on all sorts of things: your learning, your experience, the memory. Disuse can affect it in a more negative way, whereas practice and exercise can affect it in a more positive way. So what we do and what we don't do has an effect on this neuroplastic kind of environment in our brain and what these changes are looking like. So we want to encourage you to do everything you can do to have a positive neuroprotective environment within your brain.
All right, I love neuroplasticity, so I'm glad we got to talk about that. But we're gonna move on to exercise. So let's talk about a little more about exercise. So an exercise program needs to be appropriate to the capabilities and limitations of the individual and may need to be adjusted as changes occur in MS symptoms. So there's a 2-hour rule. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this before, but essentially when you're done exercising, you should feel fully recovered 2 hours later. And if you don't, then that might be a sign that you overdid it, or maybe you overheated. It should be something that you maybe take some notes on, like what you did and what maybe you could change to lighten up a little bit the next time you go to exercise, so you avoid this over fatigue and over exertion and any type of change in your MS symptoms. So there's a lot of physical therapists out there that are trained in neurological conditions, including multiple sclerosis. So if again, you're kind of struggling with where to get started with this, I recommend finding a physical therapist that has some experience with multiple sclerosis and can help you design a program and supervise you while you get started with the program, give you some tips on maybe how you could change your form to be a little bit safer, and also get started on a balance program, which I think is maybe the most challenging to do on your own without having kind of an understanding of where to get started with that. So if you're brand new to exercise, you always want to get clearance from your physician. So just if you don't get regular physicals, I certainly recommend going and getting a regular physical and talking to your physician about your interest in exercise and what you can do to get started and what you should do to get started. So exercise can be done at all ability levels. So I saw a comment about someone that's in the hospital and in bed. There are absolutely some bed exercises that you can do. There are exercises that you can do in a chair. There's different types of aerobic exercises, stretching exercises, and balance exercises even that you can do in a chair. So anything that you want to do, just about, we can make modifications for. So if you're interested in yoga, but you're not able to stand safely, then there's certainly different ways to do it in a chair. Courtney mentioned earlier that you can make amendments to your exercise. So if you're doing something that is putting you into that red zone, that hard zone where you don't want to be because you're trying to aim more towards that moderate level of intensity, then we can make some amendments to your program. And maybe instead of jogging, you're walking, or instead of going all out for 5 minutes, you go 2 minutes on and 1 minute off. There's a lot of different ways to think about how you can make exercise right for you. So in the chat, let's talk about how you modify your exercise. I threw some ideas out there, but tell me what you do to modify your exercise to make it safe for you. So someone mentions preparing before beginning the daily exercise, which absolutely, I love that. Water, being well hydrated is extremely important for someone with MS. Having a towel ready. So one trick that I use for individuals with MS is if you can get a wet towel and put it in the freezer an hour or two before you exercise, that can just be a great way to cool yourself down during rest breaks. Music is an incredible motivator. Some people say they use a chair. Exercise when it's cool. Yeah, get outside when the weather is nice, or when the weather is at an optimal temperature, like usually 60 degrees or less. Use poles or braces, walking poles, that's awesome. Lay down and lean on chairs, take breaks and drink a lot of water. Use a fan with a treadmill, certainly. Someone said for their jogs, they alternate 1 minute jog, 1 minute walk, and then drink water. That's excellent. Removing clutter, it's so important for safety. Chair yoga. Cool environment, cool vests. Cold vests are awesome. Let's see. Yeah, adjust your intensity, less repetitions, certainly. So we talked earlier about like 8 to 12 repetitions being good, but some people, depending on the level that you're starting at, might need a little bit. You might feel that muscle burn that Courtney was mentioning with, maybe five repetitions. I love these. Lots of stretching, exercise in small increments. That reminds me of the exercise snacks that we do at Can Do. I love it. Thank you guys. You guys just helped a lot of other people in this group get some good ideas for modifying exercise.
So you mentioned so many of these great ideas to avoid overheating, which I think is wonderful. So some people with MS, it's common to have a temperature intolerance, and we have to be mindful because when you exercise, you often raise your core temperature. So that's why we're talking so much about overheating. And so there were a lot of really great tips and tricks in the chat. So some of them may be repeats, some of them may not. But choose your environment carefully. So maybe you have a room where you have fans available. I saw somebody write fans are essential. I agree. Maybe you have an air conditioning unit in that room, something of that sort where you plan to exercise. Or if you exercise as a facility, like a gymnasium or something, maybe you kind of pick the gym that does have air conditioning available. If you like to exercise outdoors, I think that's wonderful. If you're in a warm climate, you can avoid the heat of the day by maybe getting out earlier in the day or later in the day, just avoiding that kind of hottest period of the day. I'm here in New England and we have New England weather, so every day is a new experience. So I like to tell any patients I have with MS, I like to say, I love if you like to exercise outside. But if we're having like a really hot ozone day or something, maybe there's a plan B somewhere where you could exercise indoors where it's a little bit cooler. And so you can kind of pick and choose day to day. Drink plenty of cool fluids, stay hydrated, and that is before the exercise begins. So in preparation, during exercise, and after. Be aware of your body, meaning, there are very subtle kind of hints that our body gives us. For example, if we're beginning to overheat, you may know yourself and know what those smaller kind of early symptoms are. And you can tune into those and recognize, oh, okay, I think I am getting a little warm. Let's see what I can change. Maybe I do a less intense interval. Maybe I have a little bit more cool fluids. Maybe I grab an ice towel or an ice pack or something just to kind of keep yourself cool in the moment. Consider swimming, water aerobics. Those are great ways to exercise for a lot of reasons. And also they keep you cooler. Other ideas I did see in the chat, but I just want to, again, just reinforce are the cooling vests. Those can be wonderful. They're vests that have little ice packs, little pockets and little ice packs all the way around. So you store them in the freezer and you just put them on when you're going to exercise. There's also cooling towels. Cooling wristbands, cooling headbands. So all sorts of cooling gear that can be really effective. So you just kind of find what works for you or the combination of things that work for you and make exercise more comfortable. And we can go to the next slide. So our next consideration is going to be choosing a setting. And so somebody said declutter, and I am with you on that, right? So we're picking an environment that we're planning to move around in, right? And hopefully become engaged in an exercise. So before we start, you want to look all around and make sure that there's no tripping hazards and there's no dangers as far as like falling, tripping, any of those things. So certainly slippery floors you'd want to avoid. Poor lighting or any dim, low lighting. You want to make sure we can see well. Any throw rugs, anything else that's on the floor that could pose a tripping hazard. You just want to clear the space for yourself so you have a good, safe place to exercise. Additionally, and especially if you are challenging your balance or if balance is an issue for you, you want to have access to something like a grab bar or a real steady secured surface. Often I'll tell people to go to their sink, like their kitchen countertop or kitchen sink, especially if that has some sort of corner. You can exercise right there and just have the ability to hold on if needed, maybe all throughout the exercise or just here and there as needed. And we have one more consideration, which is motivation. And that is everyone's consideration with exercise, right? Everyone is looking for a way to just stay motivated and stay exercising and really just make exercise part of their lifestyle. So we have a few tips and tricks for you here. One option we wanted to highlight was the MS Navigator system, which is a free phone line through the MS Society, where you can call and you can ask for amended gym programs, fitness programs, maybe group fitness, if that's what you're into, in your geographical area. So they really help find resources of all sorts in your geographic area. So specific to this webinar, you could ask about activity, accessible pools, maybe if that's what you're looking for, anything of that sort. As Sam mentioned quickly earlier, exercise snacks and the MS Moves with Mandy, those are virtual programs through Can Do MS. They're all free to access. You can find them right on the website. They're wonderful. They're these shorter snippets of exercise videos, and they're very functionally based. They give you different amendments to make for the exercise depending on your ability level. So I really encourage everybody to just check those out and see if there's something that could be of use there for you. But beyond that, just find a mode of exercise or a type of exercise that you will enjoy. And so maybe think of what sounds interesting to you, what you might like to try for the first time. Or if there's something you used to do in the past, you can try to revisit that exercise or revisit it even in an amended way. If you think outside of the box, you can find a way to amend the exercise or become involved and engaged in that exercise once again, maybe in a slightly different way. So I know of a seated Zumba class when Zumba is a type of dance and people love it. So it goes on right in my area, right in my state. And people really, really rave about it because they get dancing. They have that fun music. It's all right in the chair and they work up. They really feel like they work up a sweat and they really get a great workout out of it, but it feels doable to people of all ability levels. So that's kind of the type of idea that I'm thinking of. Motivational strategies to make the activity more fun are huge. So whether you put on some fun music that kind of keeps you in the moment, whether you listen to an audiobook, maybe it's having an exercise partner, either right in person or virtually, or maybe it's just having an accountability buddy, like you do your workout, they do their workout, and at the end of the day, you kind of like get together either on the phone or in person and kind of talk about how you're doing with your program. Mantras can be really helpful. Things like, I can do this, or I'm strong, or I'm committed. Any type of mantra, that self-talk that helps you kind of stick with the goals you've set. Setting goals, it can be a huge motivational factor. So I would encourage everyone tonight, when you leave the webinar, to set a goal about maybe how to incorporate more exercise into your life or how to begin an exercise program, and then put that goal somewhere that you will see it often. So maybe your bathroom mirror, maybe the home screen of your phone, somewhere where you can constantly be reminded of that goal. And it will just help you set priorities and just kind of stay committed and stay on track. And then tracking or charting, maybe the days that you do exercise or the weeks that you achieve the number of minutes that you are looking to achieve, are all really great ways to stay motivated. So once you get moving, we just want you to stay moving. And the best way to do that is to choose something that you enjoy and have fun with it. Try to make it as much fun as possible. Try to make it a positive part of your life. And there are so many options available that you can test things out, find out what's for you, kind of pick and choose. So, there are some examples written here like water aerobics, Tai Chi, resistance training, dance, yoga. There are a huge number of examples in the chat, and I love learning from all of you. And so I know you'll learn from each other too, or see somebody else's idea and think, hey, maybe I could get involved with that. And I love that. I think that's one of the best things about these programs. So please take a look through that chat, see if anything strikes your interest. But exercise is for everyone, and it also is unique to everyone. So it's a matter of finding your exercise in the way that you feel comfortable and enjoy doing it. And physical therapists can help with that. So if you are trying to do that and getting stuck, don't hesitate to visit a physical therapist, a neurologic physical therapist. And I think that they would be very helpful to you to help you kind of find the options that would be best, or that, you know, maybe come up with some ideas that you wouldn't have thought of. And so in conclusion, we have some key takeaways, some main points from the whole presentation. And the first and maybe biggest is that movement is medicine. I think it's a good way to think about it. You want your daily or weekly dose of your movement medicine. That will help to kind of fuel you and remind you of the importance and the commitment to exercise. A well-rounded fitness plan would include components of balance, strength, aerobic/endurance, and also flexibility exercise. And Sam, I think, might tell us the rest.
Yeah, so remember that research recommends 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week. So again, you can break that up however you want, but if you're getting the 150 minutes in, you know that you're kind of following what a lot of research has proven to be very beneficial for you. Remember that neuroplasticity principles, essentially, to summarize what neuroplasticity, it's if you find the right intensity, you're very specific about your movement, and you repeat the exercise that is challenging for you over and over again, it helps train and retrain your brain. And if you can find a physical activity that you love and makes you feel good, then I think that's a huge win. I'm a big believer that there's a type of exercise out there that anyone can enjoy and anyone can love. And if you haven't found that for you, just keep trying different options and try to get inspired by what some people have included in the chat, or what maybe Courtney and I have mentioned today. All right, so this is the fun part. I at least think it's the fun part. We're going to talk about some Q&A. So there's a Q&A option in the bottom that some people have already put some questions in. So
all righty, I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can all see everybody. And I had some great questions come in the chat during the program, and everybody was really helping each other out in the chat. So that was awesome. One question I really liked was how to determine if you're exercising enough without reaching relapse. So where that kind of border is to make sure that you're not pushing yourself too much. Either one of you.
Oh, okay. So I would say you want to build up slowly and making sure that you are tolerating the exercise. So I would also like to say exercise is safe for people who have MS and would not cause a relapse. Relapses are not caused by exercise. So you don't have to worry about putting yourself into a relapse. But what you would want to think about is the intensity with which you're working. And Sam had mentioned like shooting for a moderate intensity. And you just want to make sure that you feel good and you feel comfortable during the exercise, that your body is not overheating, because sometimes if you overheat, you may feel certain symptoms, like you may feel stiffer or a little more difficulty moving. This is not a relapse. It's just a reaction to being overheated. And then when you cool your body, that should go back to baseline. So you want to make sure that you feel good, you're exercising, that you don't overheat, and that after exercise, you may be a little fatigued or feel like spent for an amount of time, but in about 2 to 3 hours, you should recuperate and kind of have your energy level back. If it's going much longer than that, that's when you'd want to decrease the intensity or duration a little bit. That might be overdoing it just a bit. Again, it's not dangerous. It just isn't great for your energy levels, because then you're just staying fatigued for, an extended period.
Perfect. Another question I thought was interesting is, what is the best time of day, do you think, for exercising? There's probably different reasons why, one way or another, but if either Sam or Courtney, you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what type of exercise you want to do. If you want to be outside to exercise, maybe earlier before the sun has really come out and the weather has started to heat up, would be a good option for you. Or at the other end of the day, where when the sun has set, it might be a little bit better to go out, if it, temperature depending. Otherwise, there's not really an ideal time of day. It could be something that you play around with. Like, I'll tell a lot of people that it's a little bit of trial and error when you're just getting started with exercise. So I recommend, if you're brand new, trying to exercise kind of first thing in the morning, and see how that makes you feel. And then maybe try afternoon, and then try evening, and kind of take some notes on how you felt during all these times. And if one particular time of day seems to work best for your schedule and makes you feel good, then you found the right time.
Awesome. Another one I thought was really interesting is the best way to avoid repetitive motion injuries. So just avoiding injuries while you're exercising.
Okay, so to avoid injuries while you're exercising, you want to make sure that you warm up, right? So just kind of get your blood pumping, like some gentle warm-ups. So that can be kind of in a cardiovascular way, where you just do a little bit of walking or a little light exercise. Or it can even just be through strength training, that you do the movement just with body weight before you add weights. So you do a little bit of warming up. Exercise should never be painful. So the old adage, no pain, no gain, that is just untrue. That is just kind of garbage. Nothing should be painful. Pain is a sign that, your body, that you're doing something to aggravate something within your body. So if anything is feeling uncomfortable or painful, you'd want to stop that exercise. And that would be a big way to avoid any repetitive or any injuries exercising. And then having a good stretching program, specifically at the conclusion of your exercise, to do some nice stretching of the muscles that you have worked, because it's a good way to kind of relax those muscles back down. I think those are the best ways to avoid any injuries, but also repetitive injuries. Also, just kind of varying your exercise, varying what you do each day, so you're not doing the exact same thing each day, can help you kind of have a more well-rounded program.
Absolutely. I did see somebody too put a comment in there about using a yoga mat to keep from slipping. So how do you feel about that? Do you think that's a good tool to use?
Yeah, I think that, there's different, I guess, types of grips of yoga mats. So as long as you find one that, if, someone's with you, or you can test it out and make sure that it's safe on the surface that you're putting the yoga mat on, and how the yoga mat maybe like interacts with like your feet or your shoes. Probably not socks with the yoga mat. I find that I slip around. So yeah, I think it's something that could be worth trying. And it definitely is a good technique if you have like all harder floors, that you can kind of put the yoga mat down. It's a little bit softer and softer on your joints and your muscles. So I love yoga mats.
Nice. Yeah, definitely utilizing those tools. And just to reiterate, a lot of people had concerns about being able to exercise when you either utilize a wheelchair or are just sitting a lot. So maybe just to circle back on like best tips and tricks for how to make sure you stay moving when you're in those positions.
Yeah. So basically finding amended exercise programs that are performed in sitting, I think would be really beneficial. So for example, there are seated yoga programs. There's the seated Zumba, as I spoke of. So many things are online now. So that's really nice. You can actually kind of follow along with some programs or some videos. If anybody knows of great programs or videos online virtually, in sitting and wanted to throw those in the chat just for everyone else. I would encourage that. The MS Moves and MS Snacks have a plethora of exercises that are performed from sitting. Again, free virtual video options. So you can do them, in your own home, in your own time. And, any type of movement with the arms also can increase your heart rate and get you cardiovascular activity. So any type of punching or rolling or, reaching, any of those options really do get the heart rate up as well and can give you cardiovascular benefits.
Perfect. And one question I think I definitely also was wondering is the 150 minutes of exercise for just people with MS, or is it for a standard for just in general?
Yeah, that's a great exercise. It's a standard for everyone in general, but can certainly be beneficial for individuals with MS as well.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and the research, I'm sorry, but the research done specific to people with MS does also utilize that protocol. So like the research findings we were talking about specifically with the brain health stuff, did look at that exact volume of exercise, 150 minutes a week. And that can be broken up in any way that you would want to. So it could be 5 days a week, 30 minutes each day. Those 30 minutes could be 10-minute bouts 3 times a day. As long as it adds up to the 150 and you're getting to like a moderate level workload, you can gain those benefits.
Awesome. And if you have an answer, if you don't have an answer for this, it's okay, but what heart rate should we aim for when exercising?
That's a good one. So there's a lot of different methods for doing your correct heart rate. I think the most standard and maybe easiest is 220 minus your age is kind of what, there's better ways of doing it, but that's kind of the easiest. So 220 minus your age. If an individual, if you're taking a medication that lowers your heart rate, then that won't be a good way for you to measure how hard you're working. And instead you'll want to go off of that modified RPE scale that I mentioned earlier. So if you're rating yourself as a moderate level, like a 4 to 6 on the 0 to 10 scale, then you don't really have to worry as much about what your heart rate is, and just know that that's for you, that's the moderate level of intensity.
Awesome. And something I thought was kind of interesting that a lot of people were asking about specific exercises like rowing or Tai Chi. Do you guys have any favorites that stand out to you as like really good exercises, maybe for somebody that's looking to start something new or trying to get back into exercising?
Yeah, I will say that all exercise is good exercise. So it really depends on your goals and what you enjoy. And we always want to have safety in the mix, right? So it should always be something that's safe for you to do. But beyond that, what are your goals? If you're looking to become stronger, then the best exercises for you are going to be the resistance style exercises. And you may do those using body weights, or you may do those using bands or free weights. You may do it in a group style class. You may do it by yourself. You may do it at a gym. You may do it solo. But there are a lot of options just for you to pick your preferences. But if you want to get stronger, you might want to think about resistance. If you want more endurance and you don't want to feel short of breath and you want to feel more fit in the cardiovascular way, then you'd want to do some endurance exercise or some aerobic exercise. So dependent on your goals would kind of answer that question.
Yeah, there's not really like one exercise that is, this is the best exercise for MS. That's, I always, if someone loves running, then running's the best exercise for them. If someone likes walking, then walking's the best exercise for them. It's really whatever motivates you, whatever, encourages you to do every day and makes you feel good is the best exercise.
Awesome. Another question that was in here that I'm also curious about is it better to eat before you exercise or after?
So yeah, typically don't eat about at least 30 minutes before you start, or it kind of takes the your energy is more focused on digesting your food than it is going to like your muscles. So that will make you kind of not feel very good if you eat about 30 minutes before you exercise. But there's no time range on after you finish exercising on when you can eat. So at least don't eat 30 minutes before, or if you do, maybe have a small snack, but definitely no big meal about 30 minutes or more, or 30 minutes or less before starting an exercise, or it can make you feel like crampy and not very good.
And do remember that food is fuel. So it is important that you do eat, at some point before exercise, like more than that 30 minutes before, just to fuel yourself. And then again after exercise, because we want our exercise to combat any fatigue levels. And so you have to fuel yourself well enough so that you feel those benefits.
Perfect. And I think we can probably take about one more. One that I found that was a little bit of switching gears from what we're talking about is whenever you are in relapse or really struggling, how much exercise do you aim for? If you're like definitely knowing you can't do that 150, like what do you kind of strive for at that point when you're definitely in the rest mode?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you are in a relapse, I typically encourage everyone to wake up and do a full body scan, like head to toe, just kind of like assess how you're feeling, because every day and even different parts of the day are going to feel different when you're in a relapse. And if you feel like you can accomplish maybe something very light, like just even gentle stretching or gentle movement, or maybe it's just sitting up at the edge of the bed and taking some deep breaths, and that makes you feel good, then I definitely encourage you to just, gradually work your way up to doing a little bit more. But if some people say the stretching feels too much and it makes them feel worse, or just it hurts, then that might be a day that or maybe at least a time of the day that it's okay just to not do anything except focus on your breath and maybe just keeping yourself hydrated and nourished.
Yeah, I agree. In those times, you want to just listen to your body and do what you need in the moment. If you are in a relapse or finding yourself much less active for the reason of a relapse or any other reason, that also can be a good time to maybe link up with a physical therapist and allow them to kind of guide you in slowly building back up. And so sometimes that can be helpful as well.
Perfect. Well, those are really great questions. Thank you, everybody, for adding those to the chat and using that Q&A feature. That really helps us organize all of them. I'll go ahead and share my screen again so we can do the wrap up of some of these things. So I would like to encourage everybody to connect with us on social media. We have some of those like short exercise videos sometimes on our TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. So make sure that you connect with us, and then you can, give us some comments about things that maybe you're trying or things that are working for you. You will also have a survey sent out to you tomorrow. So you'll be able to do the survey and give us your feedback about the webinar. It will also pop up at the end of this program when we close the webinar. That survey will prompt for you. And then again, you'll have the opportunity later if you cannot complete it right now. And then I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this program. And also thank Courtney and Sam so much for joining us tonight. It's been a really great webinar with you all, and I think the participants really enjoyed interacting with you guys as well through the chat. So I wanted to thank everybody for participating, and we will see you again maybe next Wednesday or next month in our other Webinar Wednesday series.